I was saying, there are a couple ways all of you can get involved through fundraising, actually joining a school building trip. And I know any number of you are thinking about that, and then helping us tell the story about what we're doing. But tonight we have a good fireside chat planned for everybody. And we have two of my very good and old friends, so Randall and Michael. Michael, I met nearly 30 years ago, back in the 1990s, and worked with him on a very early internet company. And Michael and Randall, you have to check me on this, but I believe I met Randall through Michael, and Randall at the time, you were spending time as a contributing editor at Wired. And all of us have had many, many good days since then. Tonight, Randall's gonna have a fireside chat with Michael about Trump, Biden, the US elections, and the transfer of power. Randall and Michael are gonna go ahead and have a chat, and then many people have sent in questions, and so Randall has all those questions, as well as I'm sure many that he's come up with himself, and I will be back at the very end to wrap it up. Okay, and now I'm gonna stop the share. And Randall, you want to take it away?
Sure. Can people hear us and see us and all those kinds of things?
Well, Randy,
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
We can't
Okay.
see you.
Yeah, it seems to have gone off on the other end because I was here up until a couple minutes ago, but nobody needs to see me. That's uninteresting. They need to see you, Michael. And right now I'm looking at Jordan's bouncing spy head. So is Michael on screen in a way that people can see?
Yes, he is.
Okay. I can't see anything. It's now completely off except for the bouncing spy heads of UJ and Michael. Let me see if I can switch this. There we are. Here we are. Michael, it is wonderful to see you again. Let me give you a brief introduction, and any introduction of you would either have to be extraordinarily lengthy because you've done so much, or by necessity brief because we can't do it all. I met you, we were just counting, kind of about 25 years ago, when I was filling in as an editor at Wired, and I'm not sure it was I don't think it was your first book, but it was your first significant selling book, Burn Rate. I still think I bought it, cut it, edited it for Wired magazine. Still think it's the best book written about the internet era, bar none. And I recommend everybody read it to get a flavor of those times. You went on to be a absolute must-read media columnist for New York Magazine. You were the editor of Adweek, and you resurrected and made that a must-read. You're one of the great journalists of our era, and we know each other well enough that you and everybody on this call should know that I would not blow smoke up your ass. So when I say it, I mean it. Even when I disagree with you, which is not infrequently, and we may have some of those today. You wrote the first bestseller of the Trump era. You were the first journalist to think of going in there and saying, there is a big story here that no one else is seeing. That book still continues to resonate, through the administration and beyond. You wrote a second bestseller after that. You've written biographies of Rupert Murdoch, Roger Ailes. You know how this stuff works. So I really just want to go in and start asking you some questions about how you've done it, what you've seen, and what you think is happening next.
Shoot.
How the hell did you get in there? Why in the world, given your reputation for uncovering every piece of soiled underwear, Why did they let you in to talk to them and find out?
The answer is I have no idea why. It's totally perplexing. On the one hand, on the other hand, it's not perplexing at all. These are people who think about nothing, who can't strategize from one day to the next, who mostly don't talk to each other, and who profoundly do not know what they're doing or did not know what they were doing. And so on that basis, it was easy to knock on the door and have someone answer, in effect. I once, I discussed this, and a very senior member of the Obama administration had the same question for me. And he said, I can't understand this. If you came to us with this, we would have taken the request, we would have asked for a detailed proposal, we would have studied it, we would have consulted, and then we would have said no. So the Trump White House did none of those things and then said yes.
So, you're cutting to one of many chases that we'll cut to, and you've already used the word. I think what we in New York have long known about Trump, and I'm assuming this is one of the things that attracted you, is just the understanding of how profoundly incompetent he is at just about everything, like a pure and utter failure, except at self-promotion. Was that one of the attractions to doing this book, just to see how that oil and water would mix?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I thought this is going to be a great story. This is going to be an incredible story. And this is going to be a story, and this is probably what most attracted me, not at all about politics. And I thought that political reporters actually would not really be able to cover this story, that they didn't have the basic interests in character, the basic sense of humor and the absurd that this was going to require. And I mean, I've covered politics a lot in my career, but I'm not that interested in it, and I'm certainly not by nature or practice a political reporter. But I saw this story as irresistible, and it proved to be, and I think is still irresistible.
When you say that you're not a political reporter, that it doesn't interest, what does interest you? What you talked about the story, but what inside the story?
Character, who whatever the I always look for a really compelling character. I mean, I think that's what's most fun to write about, and it's easiest to write about because it literally just presents itself. I mean, you really, if you get a good character, you just have to sit back and watch. And Trump is many things, but among them, he is a good character. So that's, basically in everything I've written, it always goes to that. Who's the person?
So one of the things that interests me about both books, and this is kind of a bit of a segue from Fire and Fury to Siege, is there are other characters as well. And so there's almost a sense as if Trump is the absolutely absurd character at the center, but not necessarily the central character. Bannon has been somebody that you've been really fascinated with as well. Why? What is it about Bannon that you found so intriguing?
Well, I mean, Bannon is and continues to be really the only intelligence that has touched that White House. And you can argue that he's that he is the person who put this together, the great manipulative figure. But he's also in his own self an incredibly conflicted figure. So again, that was extremely interesting to me, extremely compelling. And the other thing is he's super funny. I mean, he's a person who cannot stop himself from talking, can't stop himself in a way from telling the truth. and doing it in with a language that's particularly, to say the least, vivid. Also,
But
he hated Trump, so that gave you a dynamic that was also totally unique. To have the closest, one of the person who made him president, one of the people with the most power and the closest to him in the White House, to absolutely detest him.
But also unable to control his own impulses, almost as equally destructive and self-destructive in the way you portray it.
Completely, and not in first and foremost in absolute inability to keep his mouth shut.
Yeah, that was it. That was the whole, to me, the whole shock of the second book.
I mean, probably yes. I mean, the shock of the second book was that I exposed him in the first book, and then he went back again on the second book.
What do you think that's about? There's, I mean, look, we all understand, we're all human. We work in the media business and the advertising business. You know, we understand about wanting to have a puffed up chest, wanting to be recognized and all that. But there's a level or a point at which that becomes a form of psychopathology. What do you think is the source of that in Bannon's case?
Well, as I said, I mean,
in Trump's case, it seems to be mental illness,
yes.
but in Bannon's case, it seems to be something else.
Partly resentment. I mean, he couldn't stand Trump, and he thought the story was not really Trump's story, that it was his story. I mean, if there is a politics that's called Trumpism, then it's really Bannonism. At the age of 60, well, now he's 67, he doesn't have a lot of time, alas, because I too am 67, to play out the number of political acts it would take for the world to understand that this is his vision and not Trump's vision.
Are these visions, and I'm not sure if this is a political question or again, a psychopathological question or something else entirely. Are these interests, are these passions fundamentally destructive, that they want to showcase power by tearing things down and tearing them apart? Or have you sensed in all of your peregrinations through this administration any form of productive building, something that they want to actually accomplish rather than just destroying other people in power?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, in what that demands. The answer that demands is an answer in the language of politics, of what your legislative accomplishments are, or what your administrative tactics are, or the kind of the kind of approach that the New York Times writes about, the standard approach, and they can't have that approach because they have no idea what that is. I mean, Steve Bannon had never had a political job, never had has been as close to the White House. I was going to say as I have been, but I've been actually much closer to the White House over the years than Steve Bannon has been. So to ask them to cast their view of the world, their emotional relationship to politics and to power in that language is almost impossible. Steve Bannon is somebody, and this is also quite true of Trump, who has this deep visceral antipathy to something. Sometimes it's cast as liberals, sometimes it's cast as the Eastern elite, sometimes it's cast as, a whole variety of boogeymen, but it's but what it is a sense of grievance, of something gone wrong, of other people's disdain and arrogance, of an outsider's view of the inside, which, by the way, obviously turns out to be a very powerful a calling card to, I believe, 74 million people who recently voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I've long thought in Bannon's case in particular that there's something almost Franciscan about this, that kind of rooted in some of the deep, conspiratorial thinking and activating or animating in the Catholic Church in the 13th and 14th centuries.
No. Well, also, I think that's a sort of sidelight. The right wing in this country, something that really is underreported, is a profoundly Roman Catholic phenomenon. Fox News is a Roman Catholic network in effect, and often Irish Catholic.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's funny. You and I've talked about this in the past. In the kind of the wave of professionalism that swept over the media, in particular in the 50s and 60s, it became almost forbidden to be able to talk or write and report on kind of religion, ethnicity, and people's backgrounds as a way of kind of getting at some of these larger emotional questions and passions. One of the very few writers who continued to do that through his life and really look through that lens was David Halberstam. But it's one of those questions that I have not seen explored at all relative to Trump and Trumpism.
Yeah, no, the interesting thing, of course, is that Trump has no religious connection
right.
whatsoever, and is as kind of disdainful of Catholics as he is of Jews, as he is of everyone. And has no real connection and knowledge that's going on.
I had a throwaway line in there, and I want to ask you about it. I kind of just breezily said, of course, Trump is mentally ill. Do you believe he is? Granted, you're not a clinician.
No,
so
I always try to avoid that question because I don't know where it gets the discussion. I can say he is not like you and me, or like anyone we know. He is not a person whose behavior, temperament, or attitudes or actions would be recognizable to any of us. So in that way, does that add up to illness, or does that add up to someone whose just experience doesn't really pertain to anything that we would recognize?
Or it could be that he is the next star of Ancient Aliens on TLC.
Or I can go further. There is a thing. What is recognizable about Trump? Trump is very much like many actors that I have known.
Interesting.
And that is, he is fundamentally a performer, and he needs attention in that way. He exists on that level. He has no inner life whatsoever. It's all external. He can't relate to people except on the level of them giving him attention.
Were there any sane and or competent people in the administration that you encountered over the course of
there were
the 2 books?
there were perfectly normal, rather ordinary bureaucratic people. None of them managed to last very long. They were mostly out by the time the second year started. And that would be, anyone from H.R. McMaster to, almost anybody who who came into the White House on a, on a professional basis. Reince Priebus, perfectly, recognizable political kind of guy.
What the family? What about Javanka?
I mean, it's curious, and I mean, she's to me is kind of unknowable. I mean, she doesn't really exist in any kind of, except that false front that you see, kind of Disney princess. But Jared, who I certainly don't know well, but have knew through this period and have spent a fair amount of time with, is an interesting case. In the end, he's really the only successful person in this White House. He's there from the beginning. He will leave at the end. Almost nothing got, to the extent that anything got done, it only got done because Jared took an interest in it, and to the best of his limited ability could work it through the channels. I mean, he's the person who was able to deal with the President of the United States in the best possible way he could be dealt with. And that, again, that's also very, very limited. But from a certain kind of bureaucratic view, Jared is the successful person.
Do you think that he will emerge from this failed White House successfully? I mean, the real estate business is not doing well at all. He's the son of a father who was in prison, who did not run the business successfully after his father went to prison. He's associated with really terrible things in this administration. Can he kind of resurrect himself? Can the couple resurrect themselves as personages about town?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is the thing about New York. Anybody can resurrect themselves if they make enough money. I think that the interesting thing to look at is, what does Jared come out of this experience with? And among the things that he does is a kind of extraordinary network of international connections in cash flow rich parts of the world. So Jared may not need the real estate business anymore. I think that of all the people, if anyone has monetized this adventure, it's likely to have been Jared Kushner.
I want to ask you about what you're seeing for the next couple years. There's this, this fiasco at the end of the administration. Do you see Trump continuing to try and just overwhelm the media infrastructure? Do you see Fox News playing along? Do you see Fox News falling prey to competition from OAN and the others? Give us a sketch of what you're.
I think that's a lot of questions, and I think that's the existential question of American politics. Trump was unlike anything we have seen as a president in the White House, and we can expect him to be unlike anything we've seen as a former president. I kind of think that Trump does not have to be the president to be Donald Trump. I would assume that his need for attention has been ratcheted up by the White House experience in such a way that he will have to keep figuring out how to ratchet up. That he will, yes, there will be a media platform play, but he will also be in every Red State Stadium on a weekly, daily basis. And he will do, I mean, he only really has one trick, and that's to compete for headlines. And he will compete with the new administration for headlines. And he has, because he has no restraints, I think will probably be in an extraordinary position to get headlines. Plus, because the media left with Joe Biden, left with a man with a moderate temperament, is in big trouble. So where do they turn but back to Donald Trump?
Which is one of probably one of the handful of truly true things that Trump said over the past couple of years, that the media are just in a absolute chase for ratings, and he provides ratings.
Absolutely. And that, I think he has also said, when he's gone, they will miss him sorely, and they will, and they already are. But then the complexion of the medium, the Fox News question is really interesting. And I think they are in their own existential state at this point. I mean, the Murdochs have always, Rupert Murdoch disdains Donald Trump. Was horrified that he had to pay court to him when he was in the White House. At the same time, Rupert Murdoch has never in his life turned down an available dollar. So Fox is a remarkable cash cow, has always been, but even more so because of Donald Trump.
So my guess, which I shared with you earlier when we were preparing for this, my guess is that Fox News will not be all in for Trump, and that they'll serve as a platform for a range of candidates under the just strictly financially based theory of the case, that a horse race is going to be better for their ratings than simply anointing a second coming of Donald Trump. Let the others do that.
I'd go further than this. I think they're just in a transition period. They want to get out of this business. They're not really in a business anymore. This is not what the Murdochs do, is run a third tier media organization. I think the issue is to sell to whom is the fundamental question, but I think that's the overriding consideration going forward for them.
Who would you sell to? I mean, let's talk a little bit about media business now, because one of the things that I'm really struck by is that the rise of FAST, free ad-supported streaming television, has created what are effectively a series of alternative cable universes. Now, they overlap in a lot of ways, but I'm struck that with this streaming revolution, these marginal networks like OAN are now getting direct access to people's homes on big screens. So the fragmentation that you and I have been talking about and chronicling for 30 odd years is now here in front of us in a 10 million channel universe. What does that mean for the Fox Newses and others?
The Fox News has another a dimension to the problem, because it has no leverage anymore. Working in the cable universe, the whole operation in the cable world is that you have leverage because
you're the one.
Yes, and because you have so many other things. If you want this, you have to take my whole package.
Right.
And my whole package means that you have to take the, et cetera. And also because of the likelihood that I'm not only a content provider but also a distributor, and I own enough that I command the power.
Right. You can throw your weight around because you've got enough of that. But the new universe, you can be a tiny little picture like OAN, and you can draw your audience.
You can, but you don't get your fees.
Right.
Remember, so Fox News exists. Its advertising is okay, but that's not. It's where its riches come from. Its riches, and the riches now, I think, what are they at? Dropping $2 billion a year to the bottom line. It comes from cable fees. Cable networks are still remain even more now desperate to get people to pay cable bills and not to cut their cord. Therefore, that makes must-have content much stronger. But having said that, Fox News used to be supported by this a major media company, and it is no longer.
Right.
So it will have, when it comes up for renegotiation on its fees, that becomes a somewhat different story. I think that's where we are in the cable world, basically still in the same place, that in order to make money, you got to have cable operators pay you big fees.
Yep.
I don't see how OAN. It's hard to imagine that as a big growth business. Big audiences I can see, but
not a fee generator.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, I get it. I want to turn to some questions from our audience. It's an audience it's a big audience, but it's also an audience that has many of our friends and associates in it, and they're great questions. They're better than my questions. And Jay just sent a note saying, if you have any questions, use the chat bar to send it in. There's a really interesting one from Kurt Abramson, who is the chair and former CEO of Share This. He's also a board member of the Adirondack Council. And he asks, as with many, I'm curious to know what you, Michael Wolff, think Trump will do after he leaves office. Now, before you answer, I want to kind of pump something that you and I were discussing offline, which is that I think that one of Trump's areas of malevolent expertise is being a direct marketing scam artist. Trump Steaks, Trump University, obviously, and I'm struck, in all the missives since he lost in the raising of millions of dollars from politics, that he basically sees politics as his best direct mail scam yet. Is that
no? And I think actually you go further. I think the growth of the right wing is a direct response phenomenon. The right wing.
Oh, going back to Richard Viguerie,
yes,
30 years ago, 50 years ago.
Totally. And the right wing book business, a thriving business, which none of those books show up few in traditional outlets. It's all direct response. Videos. Bannon's most significant professional accomplishment prior to Donald Trump was through Breitbart, or involved with Breitbart, mastering this direct response right-wing channel. Basically he's gotten in trouble and gotten indicted for pursuing that talent. So
will Trump pardon him, or is Trump going to let him hang?
I don't know, but if I were Donald Trump, I'd say, you might as well pardon everybody who you can possibly pardon. It's just, bank those favors. And Bannon is out there certainly now campaigning for a pardon by his, absolute support of the president and his quixotic effort to overturn this election. I have not spoken to Bannon recently in the last couple of months, which would mean he doesn't want to speak to me partly because he's he's out there campaigning for this pardon. But I will guarantee you that he regards this election scam as just a Trump scam.
So Richie Glassberg, who's the CEO of Safeguard Privacy, asks a question that's on a lot of people's minds. What will the long-term effect be of the abdication by the GOP to the cult of Trump? We've seen this in kind of full flowering during this post-election period. You know, what do you think looking forward? I mean, are we doomed to go the way of Italy up to Mussolini or other kind of fascist empires?
Well, yeah, I mean, remember the GOP is a minority party, but it's a big minority. I mean, so that's the weird thing. And I was totally flabbergasted by the results of this election. And I think that there's
flabbergasted that he got more votes than you would have anticipated.
Yes, I mean more votes. I mean he lost no votes from 2016 and then added votes. So the basic assumption that many of us went into this election with is that in 2016 people voted for Donald Trump because they didn't really know who he was. And having known who he was, having learned who he was, you obviously would not vote for him again, or would have grave doubts about it. That turned out to be completely not true. I mean, quite the opposite. To have gotten to know him meant that you loved him even more. So that remains this really X factor in American politics. That there is this minority party that is absolutely passionate in a way that the majority party cannot understand, accept, tolerate, or live with. So I just don't know where that how that plays out. Well, I do. It plays out very badly unless there's some series of exogenous events that dissipate it. The death of Donald Trump,
so one of the that would be one. But one thing that people have focused on a lot on both sides of the political aisle is the role of social media networks in both allowing kind of minority groups of any sort. They could just be hobbyist groups, interest groups, of being able to kind of self-congregate in their own bubbles. That's one. Another part of it is that means many of them are allowed to spread whatever untruths they might spread unstopped. Now there are other researchers like Yossi Benkler at MIT who said, no, that's actually not the big problem. The bigger problem has actually been mainstream television retailing a lot of this to a much larger group of people. But where do you stand on that? I mean, is there any hope for a reparation of civic culture in a world in which social media allow us to find our own friends?
There's not a lot that I would say on a positive basis about social media. I mean, I think that generally, we are all moving toward an understanding of the serious downside of social media. Now, having said that, I'm not sure that I would look at it as an apocalyptic medium that's going to destroy us all. I mean, I don't think it's going to elevate us all, but I think that was also the truth about television for a long time. But I also think that Donald Trump is not necessarily a structural phenomenon. The phenomenon is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is, again, and I think this is important, a consummate performer. Someone interested in different from all other authoritarians. He's not really interested in changing things or accomplishing anything or even solidifying his own power base. He's interested in the attention to he himself. He is an actor. And if you've ever been to these Donald Trump rallies, which if you read the transcripts of them, you think, well, that's utterly incoherent. But if you're there, you see that he's just throwing out thing after thing after thing and looking for the response. And when he gets the response level, I mean, it's like one of those old dials in television that goes over his head with people clapping. When he gets to a certain point, and then he just repeats it and repeats it and repeats it and repeats it. So it is very, a primitive attention-getting device, but very effective too. And so that's what's going on here. This guy who plays to this audience and plays brilliantly to this audience.
So it leads me to two questions, one of which several people have asked, including Lana McGilvray, who's the founding partner of Purpose, who asks, what do you think about Section 230? So a lot of, again, both left and right are saying we need to fix Section 230. I think basically left and right don't really understand Section 230. But I take it from what you're saying about social media that you don't think that would have much of a role at all in affecting this phenomenon we're calling Trumpism.
I don't. I mean, I would be on the side that Section 230 ought to be given some renewed attention and thought, and that there is obvious editorial responsibility on the part of these great distributors, if you will. But
which they're allowed to exercise under Section 230, but have done so only grudgingly.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So it's not Section 230. It's benefactors that are the problem.
Right. Yes, which I completely agree with. But I do think again that Trump exists outside of this discussion, that he is sui generis, which is why I said that an exogenous event that would have a profound change is the end of Donald Trump. Because I don't think, I don't think you could list all the Trump positions and take that to the political marketplace, and it would not nearly have the effect of that Donald Trump himself has.
So, another question that kind of naturally arises from this is about those who would succeed Trump. And a bunch of names have been bandied about. Obviously Pence, obviously Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz couldn't be doing, or Rand Paul couldn't be doing more other than declaring their candidacy right now. Tom Cotton, senator from Oklahoma, but I take it that, not that I want to put the answers in your mouth, that you consider them all third raters relative to Trump's ability to command an audience.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's that they are all greater or lesser politicians, and their success would be on that basis. They would run for president, on a basically all beholden to whatever the circumstance at the moment might be. They would not be reinventing. They would not. I don't think that they have the natural gifts to respond in the political environment like Trump. Now, is there somebody who could? I mean, Tucker Carlson has been extremely successful and has this real curious rapport with the Trump base or his own base.
But don't you think that people just look at him and really want to smash pies in his face?
No, actually, I mean, yes, we, the people you know, but the people who
No,
you
I'm
don't
actually
know.
thinking. I'm actually not even thinking politically. I'm just thinking that he just strikes me as the kind of guy that no matter what your politics are, you're just driven to want to smash a pie in his face.
Yeah,
It would
no,
be
no, no.
fun.
I don't think so. I mean, that's like we would have said about Trump. It's ridiculous. He's a risible figure in every way. But there is a kind of thing, I mean, Tucker's ratings are really amazing. And he has this, he just combines a lot of those elements that Trump himself took to market.
What about kind of other folks who are don't appear to be in that part of the political spectrum, who have kind of been toying around with this, Mark Cuban or Elon Musk. I mean, obviously they're attention hogs. They have some kind of pathological desire for this kind of approbation. Do you think that we're going to see a kind of an influx of, let's call them entertainment figures, coming in now that Trump has paved that path?
I don't. I mean, I don't know. I kind of doubt it. We haven't really seen that so far. We've had several cycles in which we invited that, in which certain people outside of politics tried to get in without registering hardly any impact at all. It's a, the thing about Donald Trump and what made him different is the man led a 100% public life for 35 years before he started to run for president. So, I mean, that's the thing. This whole idea of living this public life is something that mere mortals are not going to do, no matter how rich they are, no matter how hungry for attention. It's a very odd facet of one's personality and one's experience. I mean, that's essentially what politicians do over that period of time, is that they live a public life, and so when they run, they have that. They're prepared, and you can argue, I think, that the people who are successful are the people who are most experienced and most embrace living that 100% public life, and the others falter.
Yeah. I want to ask about Biden and the Biden administration, and how you see them getting off the ground in this completely unprecedented political environment, which is a combination of the pandemic, obviously, but also this great sucking of the air out of the room that Trump has done. Did Biden and this administration have the ability to pump air back into the room?
Well, I mean, I think so far, and I don't know, but I mean, I think their thesis so far is the thesis that many people advocated toward Donald Trump, which no one really implemented, which was to ignore him. If you ignored him, if you don't give him the attention that he begs for, then that undermines him. And that's clearly what the Biden people are doing at this point, that they're going forward as though Donald Trump does not exist. And they are going forward as though the whole history of Trumpism doesn't exist. It's a real, we believe in the establishment. Let's bring the establishment back. It doesn't make any difference that the establishment has had terrible press for a very long time. What Donald Trump proves to a majority, we hope a majority of of the reasonable people in this country is that the establishment is a lot better than the alternative to the establishment.
So that actually leads directly to a Q&A that came in from one of my favorite participants in this Team Dayā call. And this is anonymous attendee. Thank you, anonymous. This is a really good question. It is, when are the coastal elites going to tire of talking about Trump?
Well, as I say, the Biden administration really represents the a serious bulwark of the coastal elites, and what they have, the path that they are on is not to talk about Trump. This other bulwark of the coastal elites, which would compromise people in the media, which would comprise people in the media, including myself and including Randy. You know, we're still in hopelessly engaged in this story.
Are you? And so the last question, obviously a leading one. What are you going to be writing next? What will you be pursuing next?
I can't tell you.
I knew that was the answer. So, but even if I hit you virtually,
even if you, but I do have a book coming out in the spring, which is it's kind of a cheap book because it's a collection of older pieces, but there are some about a third of the book is new pieces, and at least one of them is a real barn burner.
Well, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Michael, thank you. It's, as ever, we've been doing this this road show, I think now for 25 years, beginning in California, and it's always both instructive and energizing to be in conversation with you.
No, totally great, and I cannot wait. Believe me, I can't wait until we can have a sandwich together.
At Donahue's.
Terrific.
Jay, over to you.
Hey, guys, thank you so much. Michael, thank you.
Jay, thanks.
Randall, thank you. I want to say thanks to Nichelle Lowe and Jordan Mitchell at the IAP Tech Lab, who helped us broadcast this tonight. And thank each of you who attended tonight. You are the lifeblood of Team Dayā. We can't do it without you. And we cannot wait until we're on the other side of this pandemic and we all get back out into the field. So until then, everybody be safe and have a great holiday. Thanks for coming tonight.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.